Places such as Okinawa in Japan and Sardinia in Italy are famous for being home to a high number of people living well past the age of 100, places now known as the blue zones. Some of the common factors in these various enclaves of centenarians are tight-knit communities who eat well, generally Mediterranean or plant-based diets. They don't over-exercise, instead having a busy domestic life full of energetic chores. They believe this is enough. But a new study written by Dr. Saul Newman, a researcher at the Australian National University, suggests the records in some of these places aren't kept particularly well, and in some cases, people are simply lying about their age. Dr. Newman stated, "I had come at this with a fairly open mind to begin with, but became far more critical as I dug into the data." Dr. Newman says he doesn't have a problem with the advice about healthy lifestyles that centenarians have, but points to flawed data as the real issue. "I'm taking issue with the data and not with the output. I think the real fascination is not so much how do I live a long time, but it's the remarkable longevity that's the issue here." He continued, "The fundamental problem here is that we don't know anyone who lives to these extraordinary ages because there are intrinsic problems with the data." When he started to dig into the data on regions with the most longevity, he says he found that they didn't actually have the longest-lived average figures that one would expect. Take Okinawa, it's world-famous for having extreme longevity. But if you look at all of Japan, Okinawa has the shortest average lifespan out of all the Japanese provinces. Okinawa also has the highest murder rate. They have one of the worst economies. And of course, one of the most heavily bombed during the war. There are a whole host of problems with the idea that Okinawa would be the longest-lived population. Why not Tokyo, where everyone's more wealthy, and they keep better records? The Sydney Morning Herald reports that its director has criticized his interpretation of the data. The director claimed Dr. Newman was using the data selectively to prove a point. He reiterated that the data from Sardinia was well validated, but did not mention the other blue zones. However, Dr. Newman says that he's used all of the data that was available from the US and from Italy, and that he was told that they also have a database hidden behind a paywall, but they won't give it to anyone who may be looking to disprove the blue zone theory. He denies being selective with the data, and says claims on Loma Linda were actually proof of selective bias. Loma Linda, with a population of about 23,000, is a U.S. district with a Seventh-day Adventist church community that has the factors believed to deem it a blue zone. Yes, they have an average lifespan of 86 and 83. But so do all 125 million citizens of Japan, all of the citizens of Hong Kong, and all of the citizens of Singapore. But those places are not categorized as blue zones, and the reason why is not clear. There's absolutely nothing new about that. You are just going to a rich part of town and seeing that the people there live longer, nothing astounding at all. They had the entire U.S. to pick from, but they decided on just one rich town in California. Newman noted that, if we did an equivalent check in London, and again went to a rich part of town, say Chelsea, I would expect the average life expectancy to be 10 years higher than what it is in Loma Linda. Fraud and data error are also reasons why Dr. Newman believes these regions have managed to claim higher longevity rates. There was an instance in Japan where they discovered 230,000 of their centenarians were already dead, where, in fact, there were actually only 40,000 still alive. And those 40,000 may also have been dead, they just couldn't certify that they were actually dead. When you have claims of thousands of people living past the age of 100 or 105, you should be somewhat skeptical. Because if history is any guide, there's fraud and genuine error all the time. And this seems to be the case with these 230,000 centenarians too. Dr. Newman says the problem with claims of longevity in particular regions was leading to wasted research. And he wonders whether these are just ways to sell certain diets or push certain ideologies. He closed by saying, if you are happy, and if you eat well, and have a good social life, and as a consequence of that, you also have a good outlook on life, then all things considered, you are probably going to live a long time. The problem is that you are not necessarily going to live past the age of 110. And you don't need to study these extraordinary populations to find any of this out.